Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Today, we're going to build a practical voice agent, which is going to be an intelligent voicemail replacement. So imagine having an AI assistant that can intercept your incoming calls, screen them to see if they're spam or legitimate, and then organize the important messages into a database for you. That is exactly what we're building today. Our agent is going to have a clear, multi-step job. First, it's going to act as a gatekeeper. It greets the caller and analyzes their intent. If it detects that it's a spam call, it terminates the connection immediately. But if it's a real person, it interviews them to collect their real name and full message. In the background, every single interaction is automatically transcribed and logged to our database, giving us a complete history of who called and why. Second, it acts as a personal assistant. So when you speak to the agent in the browser, it'll switch modes to provide a call debrief, summarizing your missed calls so you don't have to listen to audio files, you can just read a quick summary. Now, historically, connecting AI to a telephone network was a bit difficult, but today we're using LiveKit's new phone numbers feature. This gives us a dedicated SIP phone number that connects directly to our Python backend. This means we get crystal clear audio with zero latency, and we can control the entire call flow using code. We'll also be using OpenAI's Realtime API for the intelligence, and n8n to pipe our call data into Google Sheets. So this stack allows us to detect the connection source, whether it's a phone line or a web browser, and dynamically inject the correct instructions into the AI's system prompt. This ensures the agent behaves something like a strict bouncer on the phone, but a helpful assistant on the web. So in this tutorial, we'll go step by step through the Python code, provision a LiveKit phone number, and connect the real-time memory to Google Sheets. By the end, you'll have a complete, reliable voicemail system that should look a little something like this. So I'm gonna call my phone. And I'm going to decline it. Now it's being redirected to voicemail.
Hello, how can I assist you today?
Hi there, this is James's friend Mark. I wanted to know if he's down to get lunch next Tuesday.
Sure, I'll let James know. Anything else you'd like to add?
No, thank you. That's it. Goodbye.
Thank you for calling. I'll make sure James gets your message. Have a great day.
I'm going to call my personal phone again with my spare phone and pretend to be a spam call to see if we get the opposite reaction from our agent. So we're going to decline it. Now it looks like our agent received the process.
Hello, you've reached James' voicemail. May I ask who's calling and the purpose of your call?
Hi there, this is Car HQ and I'm inquiring to sell James an extended car warranty.
Remove this number from your calling list. Goodbye.
All right, and as you can see, it said, I'm not interested, remove this number from your calling list. So once again, that was the voicemail on my phone when I called from a spare phone, and our agent handled both cases and logged it. So now let's talk to our agent in the browser to see if it retained the summaries of those two calls.
Welcome back, James. How can I help you today?
Hi there, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you. How about you? What can I do for you today?
Yeah, I'm doing good. I just haven't been on my phone all day. So can you just give me the debrief of the voicemails that I missed, please? Thanks.
You missed 2 voicemails. Mark, a friend, asked if you were available for lunch next Tuesday. Also, Car HQ called to offer an extended car warranty, but the call was identified as spam.
Awesome, thanks for the update.
You're welcome. If there's anything else you need, just let me know.
Now that you've seen how it works, before we write a single line of code, let's look at the logic flow that we're going to build. The entire application hinges on this first decision point, which is the connection type. When a user connects, our code immediately checks, is this a SIP or a phone call, or are we connecting from the web browser? If it detects it's a phone call, we activate the Gatekeeper persona right here. This logic path has one specific goal, to screen the call. It listens to the caller and runs a real-time check, figuring out, is this a spam call? If the model detects that, it'll run a function tool to hang up the call. But if it's a legitimate caller, it'll record the message and the name of the caller. And in both scenarios, we'll save the transcript, send it to n8n to put into Google Sheets so that we'll have a brief summary of the voicemail. However, if we connect via web browser, like we were speaking to our agent in the LiveKit playground or something like that, we want to enable the chief of staff persona. And since the browser supports video, we also trigger the 3D avatar here. So on this side, the goal is retrieval. When you ask for an update, the agent uses a tool to fetch data from that same Google Sheet, summarize it, and speaks it back to you. This architecture completely separates the input from the output. So once again, the phone handles the data entry and the web handles the data retrieval, but they both share the same memory. Now let's get into the code. The first thing we need to do is head over to livekit.io. Now you might be prompted to create an account, but it is completely free to do so. So once you do that, click on Start Building. Now we need to create a project. In order to do that, we go to the bottom left-hand corner and click on this drop-down menu. And at the bottom, click on Create a New Project. So I'm going to call this voicemail-agent and click on Create. And now we have successfully created our project. So now what we need to do is actually follow this voice AI quick start, which if I click on it, will help us build and deploy a simple voice assistant in less than 10 minutes. These are just some docs that we can go through step by step to help us build our voice agent. So let's scroll down a bit and look at our requirements. So we need to have Python in our coding environment as well as UV. So let's head over to our development environment and I'll show you how to install those. You can use whatever IDE you'd like, such as VS Code, CLion, or Cursor. There's many others, but for this tutorial, I'm going to be using Cursor. So in a new Cursor window here, what I'm going to do is click on Open Project. Then I'll click New Folder, and I'll keep the naming conventions the same and call this Voicemail Agent, and I'll click Create. Now, let's open it. Okay, cool. So I'm going to hide this chat real quickly, and then open up this left-hand sidebar by pressing Command B on Mac. We can also hide this agent bar because we're not going to be needing that right now. So I'm going to unclick that. Now, the first thing we need to do, as we saw in the beginning of the Voice AI Quick Start, is install UV and Python. So if I go ahead and click Control \, we can run 2 commands to install both of those things. First, let's install Python. Python is the language that we're going to be using to actually build out our agent. So the first command we're going to run is brew install Python, and we're going to install this version. So let that install. It might take about 10 seconds. All right, now that that's done, we have to install UV. UV is a fast Python package manager that'll help us keep track and manage our dependencies that we are going to install and need for our project. So in order to do that, you can just run brew install UV. And I already have that installed, so this shouldn't take too long. As you can see, it's already done now. So now with UV and Python installed, let's clear this out and move on to the next step of our quick start. Okay, so now that we have these installed, let's scroll down a bit to the LiveKit CLI. We need to install the LiveKit command line interface, mainly to manage our LiveKit API keys in this project. So that is how we're going to authenticate and actually use LiveKit services in our Python code. So let's copy this command, and I'm on Mac, so I'm going to be copying this first one, but you can choose from this different list of dropdowns for which command you need. But let's copy this and head over to our code. So let's run this command to install the CLI. All right, so I already have it installed and it's up to date. The next thing we need to do is actually grab our LiveKit API keys. So we're going to do something pretty simple for that. We need to make a local environment file. So I'm going to create one of the command line. You can do that by running touch.env.local. And you can see here that file is available to us. And we can grab our API keys from the LiveKit dashboard, and I'll show you how to do that right now. All right, so back in the docs, let's go to the top right where we see our icon for our name. And let's head over to the cloud dashboard. Now go down on the left-hand side to settings and then click on API keys. So what you want to do is click on it and then click on reveal secret. And now we have our environment variables that we need to copy and paste into Cursor. So let's do that right now and paste them in like so. Let's keep going in the docs and see what's next. All right, so back in the docs, we basically did both of these commands. We authenticated to LiveKit by manually copying and pasting in our API keys. So let's scroll down and see what's next. Looks like we have to actually set up our product now. We can use UV to create a new project ready to use for our voice agent. So this is basically 2 separate commands. The first part is this one right here. And what this one does is it creates a folder for us with one file in that folder, which keeps track of our dependencies. So anything we're going to be using is going to be located in the document inside of this new folder. And then we actually change into that new folder that we create. So let's copy this and then paste it in our code. All right, so let's paste that command in. And if you can see here, we have this new folder that says LiveKit Voice Agent. And if I click into it, it has this pyproject.toml file, which keeps track of all of our dependencies. The next step is actually installing our dependencies. So let's head back to the docs to see the actual command. So scrolling down here, make sure you have real-time model selection. And it says install the following packages to build a complete voice AI agent with a real-time model and noise cancellation. So let's copy this command right here. Looks like we're installing the OpenAI plugin, a plugin for noise cancellation, as well as python.env so that we can use our environmental variables in our code. So let's go ahead and run this in our terminal, pasting it in like so. And once we run this command, we should see this file be edited in real time. So when I press enter, we see our dependencies list is now populated and we have all these different plugins ready to go. Now I actually want to move our environment file into this LiveKit voice agent folder, and we can run a command in our terminal to do that. So I want to clear this out. And then we actually need to change one level up in the directory so that we are in the root directory. So if I just check, we have our LiveKit voice agent below us, and obviously it's not showing our environment file for privacy reasons. But let's run the command mv.env.local into LiveKit-voice-agent/ and that moved our file now into this subdirectory. Okay, cool. So let's clear this out and head back to the docs. Okay, so if we keep scrolling, we already took care of our environment variables. We do need our OpenAI API key. So click on this link right here and it'll take you to platform.openai.com/API keys and create an account and log in. Once you're logged in, click on create new secret key and I'm going to call this voicemail agent. And now that I have it created, I'm going to copy this and add it to my environment file in the code. So let's head over there. So back on our .env file, let's add a new key and call it OpenAI_API_key and paste in that value that we just copied. All right, so save that and back to the docs. So scrolling down, next we need to create a file with our agent code. And we're going to copy this real-time model file. And what this does is it sets up the basic functionality for our voice agent. So we're going to be importing a few things from LiveKit, setting up a class and defining the persona of our agent, saying you are a helpful voice AI assistant. And then in this my agent function, we're going to set up a server and different components of the pipeline, as well as the OpenAI LLM, and start the actual session. And it also has this generate reply, which triggers the agent to greet the user. So let's copy this and paste it in our code. So we need to make sure that we are in the LiveKit voice agent directory. So I'm going to change into that really quickly. You can also press tab from here and it will auto populate. So now that we're in the right directory, we're going to write touch agent.py. And we can see we have this file now available to us. And I'm just going to go ahead and paste in that code that we copied. So it's a short file. It's only 42 lines. And this is the main Python code that we're going to be editing. Okay, so now in the terminal, we have to run another command. Scrolling past this file, we have to run this command to use a few different plugins. That's the download files command. So let's copy this and head back, paste it in, and we should have those 3 plugins ready. Okay, now those are good to go. Now all we have left to do is just actually run our voice agent. So the command to do that is uv run agent.py console. And when I press enter, what should happen is we'll be able to speak with our agent in this terminal. And we'll be able to see the sound bars in the different logs, very simply. So I'm going to go ahead and run that.
Hello, how can I help you today?
Hi there, can you just tell me a joke?
Sure, I'd love to. Here's one for you. Why don't scientists trust atoms? Because they make up everything.
Thank you. And can you tell me what is your name?
Of course. My name is Aurora. It's nice to meet you.
All right, so we see that our agent is showing up in the call. You can just press Control-C to close it out. So we know we have set up our product correctly. And if we wanted to run our agent and speak with it in the browser, we can easily do this with something called LiveKit Playground. So we're going to run a similar command called uv run agent.py. And at the end, instead of console, we're going to put dev and just click enter. And I'll show you how to access this agent in the web. So open up another tab and search up LiveKit Playground. And it'll usually be this first link right here. So click on that. And then we want to connect to our product. So from the beginning, if you could remember, I named mine voicemail agent. So I'm going to click on that and then click use voicemail agent. Now I'm just going to click connect.
Hello, I'm here to help. What can I do for you today?
Hi there. Can you tell me a fun fact about California?
Sure. Here's a fun fact about California. It's home to the world's tallest tree, called Hyperion, a coast redwood that stands over 379 feet tall.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. If you want to know more cool facts or have any other questions, just let me know.
All right, cool. So our agent is working in the browser, and this is the LiveKit Agent Playground. It's a nice interface that we can use to speak with our agent, and once we include video, we'll be able to see it in the top left corner. And on the right-hand side, we have a few different details we can see, like the room name, our agent identity, and then we can control our settings like our microphone and camera. So I'm going to go ahead and disconnect. All right, so we have our basic agent set up. It listens and speaks, but it's pretty generic and it's only on our local computer right here. So the next step in this tutorial is to actually set up our LiveKit phone number so that if we were to call a certain phone number, our agent will be the one to pick up and speak with us. So in order to connect our agent to a phone number, it's important to understand that LiveKit offers one free phone number that you can purchase for your account. And we can do this all in the command line. The first thing we actually have to do is authenticate our command line to LiveKit. And we already authenticated with our API keys, but if we want to connect to our account through commands that we are running, we have to actually run the LK cloud auth command. And what this is going to do is when you press enter, it'll open up a tab in your browser asking for permission to authenticate the terminal to our LiveKit account. So I'm going to do that right now and press enter. And then it'll ask for the name of your device. And when I press enter again, a tab will pop up. So now in this tab, we're going to select the project we want to authorize access to. For me, that's voicemail agent. And I'm going to click on allow access. Now it says the access has been granted and we can return to our CLI. And I'm just going to make this project default. So I'll click yes. And now we're fully authenticated so we can begin to search for numbers. One thing I should mention is that authenticating to LiveKit this way changed up our API keys that we pasted initially, but as long as they're pointing to the same project, there won't be an issue when it comes to connecting to our agent. But anyways, let's continue. So now we need to run a command in order to search for available phone numbers we can buy in an area code of our choice. So we'll be able to get a phone number and attach it to our account. And if I wanted to purchase a phone number in the 650 area code, the command I would run is LK number search. And then we include a flag that's country code. And then since I'm in the United States, I would put US. And then with the area code flag, I will just pick an area code that I want to be registered to my number. So if I click enter, these are the available numbers that I could possibly purchase. It showed me a bunch of results, but we only need one. So we can pick a random number. For instance, I'll just pick the first one. So I'll make sure to copy that first one right here to my clipboard and I'll click copy. Okay, and to actually buy this number, we need to run another command. And the command we need to run in order to purchase this number and have it be attributed to our account is LK number purchase. Hyphen numbers, and then we can just paste in that number that I copied up top and wait for this command to finish. And cool. So it says successfully purchased one phone number. And then again, we didn't have to input any card info as LiveKit gives us this number for free. So the next step is we actually have to connect this number to our agent so that on my personal phone, if I were to call this number, our agent would pick up and talk to us. That is how we were going to test it. And at the end, we'll be able to connect that to our voicemail so that if we decline a call, this agent will pick up our voicemail for us. In order to do that, we have to set up something called a dispatch rule. And it's a bit easier to do so in the LiveKit dashboard. So head back over here and we're going to go to telephony and then click on dispatch rules. Now we need to create one. Go to the top right corner and click on create new dispatch rule. So we have to give it a name. I'm going to call this agent rule. Now, what a dispatch rule does is it tells LiveKit where to route incoming phone calls. So it connects incoming calls to our agent. You can kind of think of this like a receptionist. So a call comes into the number that we purchased. The dispatch rule is going to decide which room to put it in, and then our agent is going to join that room to handle the call. So let's continue with the setup. We're going to keep the rule type as individual because we want an individual room for every time we call. And then for the room prefix, instead of pre, we want call hyphen. So the reason for this is all phone rooms start with this call hyphen prefix. And we're going to use this to detect whether a room is a phone call or not to set our agent's persona. We also have to add an agent dispatch. So we have to add the name of our agent. So I'm going to call this voicemail hyphen agent. And we're going to make this change in our code by giving our agent a name. That is how LiveKit is going to identify the agent that it needs to dispatch to the room. Then for the phone numbers, we're just going to go ahead and click the number that we purchased in the command line. So this is the number that I purchased. We have everything set up and I'm just going to go ahead and click create. Okay, so we see our dispatch rule right here. Now that we've set up the dispatch rule in the dashboard, we need to make sure our code is configured to work with it. So open up your agent.py file and go to line 18. And in between these parentheses, we actually need to add that agent name to match what we put in the dispatch rule. So the parameter is agent underscore name. And if you can remember, I put voicemail hyphen agent. So this is how LiveKit is going to identify our agent. Once we run this file, LiveKit is going to connect our running file to the incoming call through our dispatch rule. So now that we give our agent a name, LiveKit has a way to identify our agent. So let's run this file and actually call the number that we purchased to see if our agent will pick up. So let's do that with the run agent.py dev. And I'm going to click enter. Looks like our agent is good to go. So I'm going to dial this number with my personal phone. All right, so our agent is running in the terminal. I have my phone and I have pasted in the number that I purchased and I'm going to call it right now and we'll see if it picks up.
Hello. How can I help you today?
Hi there, can you just tell me a fun fact about yourself?
Sure. Here's a fun fact about me. I can understand and speak many languages and accents. And I can also see and describe what's happening in the environment around you if you share your camera. That way, I can be even more helpful and engaging in our conversations.
Got it. And can you just tell me a fun fact about California?
Absolutely. Here's a fun fact about California.
It's home to the world's tallest tree, called Hyperion. It's a coast redwood that stands over 380 feet tall.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm glad you enjoyed it. If you have any more questions or want to chat, just let me know.
All right, so now I'm going to hang up, and awesome. We see that our agent has picked up the call, and when I hang up, we can see that the session has been closed. So we can successfully call our LiveKit phone number, and our agent will pick up. But as you may have heard in the call, the agent still thinks that it's speaking to us in the browser. So we have to change the agent's persona based on whether we are calling it or we are talking to it in the LiveKit playground. Now, this is very simple to do, and it's going to take a few changes in our code, so let's jump right into that. So let's shut down the agent by hitting Control-C while we make our code changes and clear this out. Firstly, we need to add an import all the way at the top, and that import is auto subscribe. We're going to need this import because normally the agent joins the room instantly, but in this case, we're going to pause for a split second, inspect the room details, and then decide how the agent should behave. This is how we're going to give it something called context awareness. So it's aware whether it is being called or we're talking to it in the browser. The next edit we need to make is actually in this assistant class. So when we're initializing our agent, we need to pass in a new variable called isPhone. We can do that by adding this parameter in like this, is_phone, and have it be of type bool, meaning it's a true or false value that we're going to pass in when we are initializing our agent. If isPhone is true, then just be a strict receptionist. If it's false, then be a helpful assistant. So we're going to set the system prompt dynamically. So in this assistant class, we're going to change up these instructions a little bit. So what I'll do right here is I'll write if is_phone. We'll make this instructions variable and set it equal to something like you are a helpful voice AI assistant answering a phone call. And we'll keep it short like that. And then we'll get into the other case, which is we are talking to our agent in the browser. We can just set instructions equal to something like you are a helpful voice AI assistant speaking on the browser. And then more specifically, we can say you can be a bit more verbose. All right, cool. Now we have to feed this instructions variable into our initialization instead of this string we have right here. So I'm just going to delete this and write in instructions. So this is just a simple way we can differentiate the different personalities. Now we have to edit this my agent function. So if we come down here, what we're going to add in here is going to be the magic part. Before we start the session, we need to check where the user is coming from. So over here on line 26, we're going to add this. So we're manually connecting to the room first. This will give us access to look at the room name. And like I said before, in LiveKit, all phone calls automatically start with call hyphen. So we can detect that with just one line of code like this. So after we connect with the CTX variable, we're fetching the room name and using Python's starts with function to see if the room name starts with call hyphen. And this will either put true or false into isPhone. So that's how we're setting this variable, which we are going to pass to our agent. So on line 37, where we're making our agent, we need to pass in is_phone equal to isPhone. Finally, let's change the greeting. If I pick the phone up, I want the agent to identify itself immediately, but if I'm on the web, I want it to welcome me back. So we'll have a conditional greeting right here. We'll say if isPhone, then we're going to have greeting equal to something like, hello, this is James's AI. Who is calling? Okay, and for the other case, we need else, and we'll have a greeting. We'll have that be, welcome back, James. How can I help you today? All right, and then we're going to pass this greeting into the generate reply. So we can just delete this from the starter and pass in a greeting. Okay, cool. So now all we have to do is just save this file and run it. And we'll test calling it versus speaking to our agent in LiveKit Playground and see how it behaves and greets us differently. I do want to add one more line of code right below where we set isPhone, and that's a simple log to the terminal, which is going to print, is this a phone call? And then the value of isPhone. So we can double check with the terminal that our code successfully detected the type of call we're on. All right, so the command to run our agent, whether we are calling it or speaking to it in the browser, is the same, which is uv run agent.py dev. Let's get this running. So now I will call my agent on my personal phone, and we'll see how it greets us and if we get this print statement in our terminal.
Hi there. You're connected to James's AI helper. How can I assist you today?
Hi there, are we speaking in the browser or over a phone call?
Hi. We're actually speaking over a phone call right now. It's just like a regular voice call. How can I help you with that?
Awesome, that's it. Thank you.
You're welcome. If you need anything else, just let me know.
All right, cool. So I'm going to hang up. And we see that the session has closed. And cool, I saw in the terminal, if we scroll up, we had this line right here, which says, is this a phone call? And it says true. So it successfully detected that we were calling in on a phone line, and it greeted us and spoke appropriately. So now that that session is closed, let's try speaking to our agent in the browser. So let's save this file again and head over to LiveKit Playground. And the link, if you lost it, is agents-playground.livekit.io. But anyways, I'm going to choose the agent that I want to speak to. And don't forget, for the agent name, we actually have to write that in manually. So we're going to write in voicemail-agent and then click connect.
Sure thing, James. Just let me know what you'd like to focus on, or any project you're working on, and we can dive right in.
Hi there. Are we speaking over a phone call or over the web or browser?
Hey there. We're speaking over the web or browser. This is a voice conversation happening right through your internet browser.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're very welcome. If you have any more questions or need help with anything else, just let me know.
Okay, cool. So it looks like our agent has context awareness and can tell whether it is being spoken to in the browser or a call. One thing we notice is that saying this when enjoying the call, so we can tweak the greeting a little bit, but overall our agent knows where it's being spoken to. So that's good. So I'm going to disconnect from this call and let's head back to the code. And looking back at the logs, we see, is this a phone call? And it said false because it detected the room was coming from the LiveKit Playground. Awesome. So now we can successfully differentiate between which type of call the agent is on, and we can actually inject that right into its different instructions. So I'm going to hit Control C, and let's continue building out this agent. All right. So now our agent is context aware, but we need to give it the ability to detect and hang up on spam calls. We're going to be doing this with a simple function tool, which is a tool that our agent can execute on its own and edit its prompt to carefully listen to the phone call and detect if it's spam. So firstly, we need to add a couple of imports. The first one is going to be API, and we're going to be using the LiveKit API to delete the room, which will effectively hang up the call. Next, we need another import called run context, and this will give us context of our session about the current call, as well as get job context. And then we need to add a new line, which is from LiveKit agents.llm. We're going to be importing function underscore tool. Now we're going to go right above our assistant class and start defining this function tool. So I prepared the base of this function. Feel free to pause and copy and paste this, but I'll walk through it step by step to show you what's happening. So first we have this function signature up here, which just defines the hang up call function. We're passing in the run context, like I said, to access information about the current session, as well as this is spam variable. Now this is a variable that our agent is going to set either true or false when it calls this function to hang up. I included context of the call, so it says hang up the call, use is spam is equal to true if the caller mentions something like a car warranty, insurance offers, debt relief, pretty typical topics of spam calls. And then I said use spam is equal to false for normal calls that it detects. Then we have a quick log to check what the agent set this is spam variable to. And then we call disallow interruptions. This just tells the LiveKit pipeline that if a user speaks, do not interrupt the function, just let it finish out. This is helpful because sometimes the agent could call the function, and if we say something too early, this function won't fully execute. Next, we're just checking the is spam variable. And if the agent said it was spam, then we set two different messages. So if it is spam, the agent says, I'm not interested in any unsolicited offers. Please remove this number from your calling list. But if it's not, then we tell it to be polite. I'll make sure James gets your message. Have a great day, and hangs up. Then we trigger the agent to say this by running generate reply on the current session from run context. So when the function hits this line, we're going to hear the agent actually say one of these two things. Then we actually use the wait for playout function. Now this is typical LiveKit code etiquette, making sure that this message gets fully out before we hang up. And then we use the get job context function that we imported and store that into this variable. And the way the agent actually hangs up is by making a delete room API request. So from this connect variable, we gather the room and we call the delete room function from the LiveKit API, which we imported. And then in parameters, you have to pass in the room that you want to delete, which we gathered from this get job context function. So all this line is doing is gathering the room, calling the delete room API, and passing in which room name to delete. And then we have some basic error handling with a try and accept case if this fails for some reason. Now we need to make some edits to our assistant class so that we improve the instructions and actually give our agent access to the tool. And let's initialize tools for the other condition, but we can just keep that blank for now, like so. And the last step is we have to include it in our initialization just like this. Now we need to make a couple more tweaks to get this functionality to work. So we actually need to go over where we are initializing our OpenAI LLM and define the specific model that we're using. We're going to come down here and I'm going to write in model is equal to GPT-4o mini. There's actually a version of this that's relatively cheap, which is real-time preview 2024. 1217. and it will allow us to actually call these functions. And we need to define the model so that we can execute function tools. If we didn't have this, our OpenAI LLM would default to just a text only mode, which isn't compatible with calling functions. Also, we need to make one more tweak in the actual function tool. So up here, you just need to add parentheses at the end like this. Okay, cool. So now let's actually run this file and test that our agent can call this function. So I'm going to run it the same way we've been doing with uv run agent.py dev. And once it's ready, I'm going to dial into my agent and pretend that I'm a spam caller to see if it recognizes it and it hangs up on the call.
Hello, this is James's AI. How can I assist you today?
Hi, I'm inquiring to sell you a car warranty.
I'm not interested in unsolicited offers. Please remove this number from your calling list. Goodbye.
Amazing. So we see that I got hung up on by the agent. And if we take a look at these logs, the tool was executed. So I'm going to go ahead and press Control C. So let's take a look at these logs just so we can understand a little bit of what happened. So when I called the number, it initialized the process and created a room. And we see that we subscribed to the audio. We also get these two logs right here, detected we were calling from a phone, and that we called the hang up call function with the spam parameter being true. And the last thing we see is the tool was completed because that tool actually deletes the room and hangs up the call. And that's all this logic right here. And if we go back up to the tool, the agent said the full message, which was his reason for hanging up, because we used this wait for playout method. And then it actually deleted the room and hung up. So the flow was very smooth. Okay, so now let's move on to the next step. All right, so to recap where we're at, our agent can now detect whether a call is spam or not and hang up on the call. But the agent doesn't have any memory. And what I mean by this is every time it has a conversation, we're not storing these conversations anywhere for our agent to remember. So if a friend calls this number and leaves you a message, currently there's no way to actually save that. So what we need to do is capture our transcript and send it to some type of database before the room is destroyed. And for that, we're going to be using n8n and Google Sheets. Now, for this part of the tutorial, you're going to want to head over to n8n.io and create an account. You can even get started for free. So once you've done that and log into the dashboard, it should look a little something like this. I'm going to explain to you how this workflow works, and then I'll show you how you can actually input it into your own code. So we are going to take our conversation transcript and send it as an API request to this webhook node. Now, what a webhook node does is it basically just sits waiting for somebody to request it. And what you can do in LiveKit is actually access the whole conversation transcript, which is everything that's being said. And we're going to send that as the body of our request, meaning our workflow has access to the whole call between the agent and the user. Now, we pass that transcript over to an LLM chain node. All that's going to happen here is we're going to take this transcript that we just got sent, and we're going to ask AI, more specifically OpenAI, to summarize the conversation for us. Like we said here, you are processing a phone call transcript between a user and an AI agent. Your task is to summarize the conversation, create a clear, concise summary of what was discussed, focus on a few key points, and we're also going to format the timestamp. So alongside the conversation, we're going to store when the call happened as well, just for better readability in our Google Sheets database. And then we're also going to include one more variable, which is spam risk. And that's either going to be high or low, depending on the voicemail summary. So once again, what's happening in this node is we're taking the conversation, the AI is summarizing it for us, and it's going to output it in this summary variable. We're going to get the time and date and also the spam risk. Okay, so moving on, we can look at the output parser just to see what we're outputting. We're going to have the summary, date and time, and spam risk. So those are the three outputs we want from this node. Then we move on to Google Sheets. And if you look at this node, what I did here is we're just copying these three outputs and pasting it in Google Sheet. So what you can do very simply is make a Google Sheet. And all you're going to do for now is just label the first three columns. So the first one is going to be voicemail summary. Second, we have time and date. And third, we have spam risk. So as you can see, for these three columns, we're just mapping the values that our AI gave us. And then that's all we have to do for this step. So now we have a respond to webhook node just to close up this whole workflow and let our AI agent know that the API request was completed. So to access this workflow, just go to my GitHub, which I linked in the description. And this one is the n8n summarized call file. So click on that. And then you can just download it by clicking on this download icon right here. And then once you do that, head back to n8n and click on these three dots in the top right-hand corner. And then click on import from file. And then just choose that file which you just downloaded, and this whole workflow is going to show. So lastly, I'm also going to mention that you need to take a couple of extra steps for this to work. So you need to connect your credentials to your OpenAI API account. It's very easy to do so. All you have to do is paste in your API key. And if you can remember earlier in the tutorial, we have this whole API key in our .env.local file. So when they ask you for your OpenAI credentials, you can just paste in that key to connect. And also, you're going to have to authenticate to Google, but this is very easy to do. Usually there'll be a pop-up which lets you sign in with Google. And then you would just choose your Google Sheet that you actually created and Sheet 1, and everything would work the same. So as long as you make those 2 changes, this whole workflow should work for you. Okay, so once you have this workflow in your own n8n, what you're going to want to do is click on this first node and open it up. And we want to copy the test URL because we're going to need this for setting up the actual code for sending over the API request. So copy this and then head over to your code. Head over to your environment file and we're going to add in n8n underscore transcript underscore webhook underscore URL and then just paste in that URL that we copied and save it. Okay, so now we're going to head over to our agent.py file to actually start editing the code. And let me explain a little bit of what we're going to do. So we're going to send the transcript as a part of this hangup call function, right? Because when our agent hangs up the call, that's when it knows the conversation is done. And we can send off our transcript to save it in our database or our Google Sheet. But what's going to make this easier is if we make a helper function take care of all that logic. So we can just simply call that within a couple of lines in the hangup call function. This may sound confusing, but it's very simple and I'll walk you through it step by step. So the first thing we need to do is add a few imports. So up here at the top, before everything, you need to write import JSON for our API request, OS to get our environmental variables, logging, just so we can log a few things to the terminal for troubleshooting, and requests because that's how we're actually going to send a post request to our webhook. Next, we need a few things for the actual timestamp. So today is January 5th, and the way our computer would access that external date and see that it is January 5th is through something called datetime. So we're going to write from datetime import datetime. And then we also need to get our time zone, and we can do that with another simple import, which is from zone info, import zone info. And those are the main imports we need for this functionality. So let's define our helper function right above our hangup call function. And it's going to be exactly this. So this is not too long, about 15 or 16 lines. All we are doing is taking our current transcript data in our timestamp, accessing the URL to send the post request to, and just checking that it exists, setting up the payload, which is our specific data we want to send, and then using request, which we imported, and sending a post request with this JSON payload. And that's it, super simple. We have a try except in case it fails. It will log to the terminal what went wrong. So once again, all we're doing is we are getting our URL, formatting the data we want to send, and then sending a post request to our webhook and logging the response to the terminal. Now what we need to do is actually call this helper function as part of our hangup call function tool. So the first change we're going to make to this function is right before we kill the room. We want to capture the transcript while the room is still available, and conveniently we'll store the date time at the same time. So we're going to do that exactly like this. The first thing we're doing is grabbing our session history, which is stored in this session.history object of our current run context. We're casting that as a dictionary and then grabbing the items, which are the messages going back and forth. Then we use a special JSON.dumps, which stores this as a string compatible for API requests. So that's transcript data. And like I said, we're also storing the timestamp. So datetime.now gives us the current date and time. And then because I'm in the PST time zone, I'm using the America/Los Angeles time zone. And then putting that in ISO format gives us a recognizable string that we can also send in our API request. Then we keep this logic the exact same as we hang up the room, but we do this before sending the API request because we want to hang up the call first and then worry about the API call being sent. So for that, after the room is done being destroyed, we'll just send the captured transcript to n8n just like this. So the flow is the agent says a goodbye. We wait for that to fully play out. We capture the transcript and timestamp, delete the room, and then send our conversation to n8n to store. Now let's test this. So back in n8n, we want to make sure we execute our workflow so that it's in test mode. And you can see right here, it says waiting for you to call the test URL. So what we'll do is we'll speak with our agent, have it hang up the call, and then watch to see if our workflow gets executed and our conversation gets saved in our Google Sheet. So let's run the agent. So let's do UB run agent.py dev, and we'll let this run for a little bit to make sure the worker is registered. Okay, so it looks like it's good now. I'm going to give my agent a quick call.
Hello, this is James's AI. How can I assist you today?
Hi there, I'm calling to sell James an extended car warranty.
I'm not interested in unsolicited offers. Please remove this number from your calling list. Goodbye.
Okay, and I got hung up on, and as you can see, the workflow got triggered and the AI is doing its thing. And it looked like it appended the row in our Google Sheet. And we got a response back from our webhook. So nice, looks like everything worked. And let's take a look at the logs. Looks like we got a small speech error, but we don't have to worry about that. But we do see all our logs. It detected it was a spam call, so it executed the tool, told us that it was going to hang up, and we heard the full message. Then the room was deleted, And we see here that our whole workflow in n8n was executed. So now if we go to our Google Sheet, we see that we have this first row updated, summarizing our call, saying the caller attempted to sell James an extended car warranty. The AI agent responded by declining the unsolicited offer, requesting removal from the calling list and ending the call. We got a time and date, and then also a spam risk. And if we look at this workflow, we can kind of see the whole flow of it. So I'm going to expand this. So real quick, let's open up this webhook node, and we see the transcript came through with the different messages saying, hello, this is James AI. How can I assist you today? Then I spoke back a little bit down here saying, hi there, I'm calling to sell James an extended car warranty. And then it's just the rest of our messages as well as our timestamp, which we correctly extracted using date, time, and zone info. And then we went through this basic LLM chain. Now that we see it here, and we can see here, we gave it the system prompt and also the transcript, which came through. So the different messages, and this is the actual raw timestamp we gave it. And then for the output, it gave us the three things that we wanted: the summary, the date and time, and then the spam risk, which is exactly what we put in our Google Sheet. So if we open up this append node, it pulls up a snippet of our Google Sheet on the right-hand side and what exactly it put in. Then finally, we just ran this respond to webhook node to let our function tool know that we are done. So very cool. We have now the ability to hang up on our caller and actually log to our Google Sheet, a summary of the call, when it happened, and if there was a spam risk. Very cool. So we're going to add one more n8n workflow, and I'll show you exactly how to do that. But first, I'm going to close out this agent. So right now, if you take a look at our agent class and the way it's being set up, we have a tool if we detect that we're on the phone, but we haven't given our agent a tool if we're speaking to it in the browser. And if we're speaking to it in the browser, we want our agent to be able to give us a debrief of our voicemails and actually access that Google Sheet to tell us what we've missed. So for that, we need a tool that's going to fetch the information from this Google Sheet in real time and be able to tell us the information and gather. So we're going to use another small workflow in n8n to do this, which you can grab from my GitHub link. So back in the browser, before we move on to the next workflow, make sure to publish this so that this workflow is in production mode. You can do that by saving it and clicking this publish button in the top right. And then go back to your webhook node and click on these three dots and then click on copy production URL, which is going to be different than we have in our environment file. So I'm going to paste this in my environment file. So I'll delete this and then paste in the new one. So now every time we run our agent, we don't have to click execute workflow every time because this workflow is running in production. But anyways, let's go back to the browser. So back in the n8n dashboard, I have already created the workflow, but what you're going to do is click on create workflow right here. And then go to my GitHub repository, grab the fetch voicemails.json file, download it with this button, and then import it up here in the top right from file. But anyways, I'm going to go to mine that I already have. So this one's a lot simpler. All that we were doing is we were making a GET request because instead of sending data, which is primarily what we're doing with a POST request, a GET request is focused on retrieving and fetching data. So we're going to trigger this webhook the same way we were doing in the first workflow. But what that does is it starts this workflow. And what we do here is we get a few rows in our sheet. So we have that voicemail recap Google Sheet, and we're just getting all of the rows and combining them. Then we use an aggregate node to get all the information that we have found and aggregate it into one list, which is going to be a list of voicemails that have recently been appended. And then when we respond to the webhook, we are going to put in the response body what we have found so that we can return it to the agent. So that's all we're doing. We are triggering the webhook, getting data from Google Sheets, making it look a little bit nice and formatted, and then giving that information back to our agent so that I could speak the results back to us. So that's the basics of this workflow. Now let's set up the code so that we can actually trigger this workflow when we're speaking to our agent in the browser. All right, so we're going to add another function tool for this. So what's going to happen is when we speak to our agent in that LiveKit playground setting, we want the agent to be updating us on voicemails that we've missed or recent voicemails that we've gotten. So how that's going to work is we're going to ask our agent to update us. Then it's going to call a tool to actually get this information, retrieve it from our workflow, and then return that information back to us. So this is what our function is going to be right here is what I've just pasted in. This function will connect our agent to our get webhook. So in the description, we have, it's going to retrieve recent call history, voicemail summaries, and debrief information from Google Sheets. Use this when the user asks about any voicemail or voicemail summaries, recent calls or call history, or debriefs or what happened. Now walking through the actual syntax of this function, first we run that disallow interruptions so that this function runs fully interrupted so that we guarantee it executes. We're going to add another webhook URL, so it's going to gather that URL in this variable right here. And then all we're doing is just calling get on this given URL. And then response should hold our data from our Google Sheets, and we're going to return the actual text in response. And then we have some basic error handling, like if it's not 200, we'll say no data available, or if the API request didn't work, we'll return failed to retrieve data. But all you have to know is we call request.get on this URL and return the actual text response that we have gathered. So next we need to change up our agent's instructions a little bit and give it access to this tool. So now in these parentheses, we can write in get_call debrief. And then we'll change up the instructions to say something a bit more accurate. So we'll just say, when asked about voicemails, calls, or call history, use the tool to retrieve the information. And then keep responses concise. So back in n8n, make sure you have this saved. And let's copy the test URL from this node. So on these three dots right here, we can click copy test URL. Now let's go ahead and paste that in our environment file. So in the env.local, we're going to write in n8n memory underscore webhook underscore URL, and then paste that in. And now we are going to test our agent. So I'll go ahead and do uv run agent.py dev. And I'll make sure this workflow is running by clicking on execute workflow. Now it is waiting for the trigger event. So let's head over to LiveKit Agents Playground. Choose the agent we want to speak to, and I'm going to make sure I include the name. And now let's click on connect.
Hello, how can I assist you today?
Hi there, I've been away from my phone all day. Can you just give me a brief recap of my voicemails that I missed?
You received a voicemail today at 9:59 a.m. from someone attempting to sell you an extended car warranty. The call was declined, and you also requested removal from their calling list.
Awesome, thank you.
You're welcome. If there's anything else you need, just let me know.
Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and disconnect, but really cool. So we see that our workflow was executed. And if I open this up right here, we'll see that we got that one voicemail summary, which was fetched from our Google Sheet and then spoken back to us by the agent. So we know that both of our tools are finally working. Like the other one, we can just publish this and I'll say version 1. And let's copy the production URL so we don't have to keep clicking execute workflow. So on these three dots, I'll click copy production URL and I'll head back to the code. So let's close out this agent right now and let's clear out the terminal. And back in the environment file, let's change up this URL that we pasted and paste in the production one. Okay, cool. So now we're up to our last step, and that is actually adding the avatar to the browser part. So when we speak to our agent, it has a face attached to it when it is giving us our voicemail summaries for a much, much better user experience. We're going to be adding an AI avatar from Beyond Presence. So in order to do that, click on Voice AI Quick Start, just so we're in the LiveKit docs, and then look in the search bar and then go to Beyond Presence Virtual Avatar Integration Guide. So just an overview. Beyond Presence provides hyper-realistic interactive avatars for conversational video AI agents. You can use the open source Beyond Presence integration for LiveKit agents to add virtual avatars to your voice AI app. So the first thing we need to do is install the plugin, and then we're just going to grab our API key from this link. So let's copy this and head back to our code. So I'll paste in that command, and we can verify that it worked by checking our TOML file and seeing the Beyond plugin right there. All right, so back in the LiveKit docs, let's grab our Beyond Presence API key. So let's follow this link right here. And what you can do is create an account and sign in. It is free to do so. And they also offer a really awesome free tier with a good amount of credits, which is really nice. Instead of calling a request to do that, we can just go to the dashboard itself. And to grab your API key, go to API keys here on the bottom left, and then click on create API key. And I'll just name this voicemail and click on create. Now I have this, I'm going to copy it and paste it in my code. So let's clear up the terminal, and in our local file, we're just going to write b_API_key and paste it in like so. Now let's go over to the agent.py file to start editing our code and see what the docs say. So if we keep scrolling down, the usage is very simple. We just import the plugin at the top of the file. And then after we start the agent session, we'll initialize the avatar and start the session. So this is the main code block that we need to add in. So copy exactly this portion right here and head to the code. And let's scroll down right under where the agent session is initialized in our code. I believe that is right here. Right after this, we can paste in what we copied. Okay. So let's indent it a little bit and start editing it for ourselves. We can also take this a step further by only enabling the avatar if we're not on the phone. So we'll write if not is phone, then reinitialize the avatar. So we're only using credits when we're speaking to our agent in the browser, and we're not going to worry about it when we're calling our agent by the phone. Let's not forget to add the B import at the top. So right after we have OpenAI noise cancellation, we can just include it like so. Okay, back to the code. We do need to choose an avatar ID. So let's go to Beyond Presence's website to choose an avatar ID from their gallery. So back in the dashboard, we can just click on avatars in the left sidebar. So I'm going to scroll through these, and you can use any avatar you'd like. So let's scroll down and find one. Anyone is fine for now. we can just use this one. So I'm going to copy her ID. Now it's copied to the clipboard and we'll paste that in our avatar initialization in the code. So let's head back. Okay, now I'll delete these 3 dots here and paste that in. And now we are good to go. And there it is, guys. We are finally done with our project where we mainly edited this agent.py file. It got up to about 160 lines of code, so not too bad. To recap, we have first a gatekeeper that hangs up on spam calls. We have a memory system that logs every conversation to our own private database. And we have a chief of staff interface that gives us a face-to-face debrief in the browser. Let's make one more edit, and I should have done this earlier, but it's with the greetings. So beforehand, the greetings were a little bit off, so we're going to be more explicit for our AI and tell it to actually say this sentence instead of beating it to it. And that should fix our strange greeting that we were getting. All right, so the code is done, but it's still just a sandbox, right? We call the agent, it logs to our Google Sheets, and we can speak to our agent in the browser. But to make this my actual voicemail, I need to tell my phone carrier to stop answering calls and send them to my AI. So in order to do that, it's really easy. You just make a simple call. So I have Verizon as my phone carrier. So I'm going to dial *71 and then follow it by the LiveKit number that I purchased. So I have *71 followed by the LiveKit number that I purchased. And once I call this specific phone number, it's going to redirect all of our voicemail calls to this number. For AT&T, it's usually 004, but you can easily look up your carrier's conditional call forwarding online. So now I'm going to hit call and we should hear a success message.
Calls will be forwarded to 65079578002.
And we heard the message that said calls will be forwarded to my LiveKit phone number. So now what I'm going to do is test calling my phone from another phone to see if our voicemail agent picks up. Now we do need to be running our voice agent like we've been doing with uv-run agent.py dev. But if you wanted this to work 24/7, you would just deploy it to LiveKit Cloud. It's super simple. It takes a few steps, and I'll link a video for that in the description. All right, so I'm going to run my agent. While this agent is up and running, I'm going to call my personal phone from my brother's phone and see if my agent starts speaking on my brother's phone when I decline the call. So I'm going to call my phone. And I'm going to decline it. Now it's being redirected to voicemail.
Hello, how can I assist you today?
Hi there, this is James's friend Mark. I wanted to know if he's down to get lunch next Tuesday.
Sure, I'll let James know. Anything else you'd like to add?
No, thank you. That's it. Goodbye.
Thank you for calling. I'll make sure James gets your message. Have a great day.
All right, and looks like I got hung up on. It executed the tool, and it said I was likely not a spam because it says spam falls here. So I'm going to call my personal phone again with my spare phone and pretend to be a spam call to see if we get the opposite reaction from our agent. So you decline it. Now it looks like our agent received the process.
Hello, you reached James' voicemail. May I ask who's calling and the purpose of your call?
Hi there, this is Car HQ, and I'm inquiring to sell James an extended car warranty.
Remove this number from your calling list. Goodbye.
All right, and as you can see, it said, I'm not interested. Remove this number from your calling list. So once again, that was the voicemail on my phone when I called from a spare phone, and our agent handled both cases and logged it. So now let's talk to our agent in the browser to see if it retained the summaries of those 2 calls. So let's keep our agent running and head over to our browser. Let's speak with our agent in the playground now and include the name as always.
Welcome back, James. How can I help you today?
Hi there, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you. How about you? What can I do for you today?
Yeah, I'm doing good. I just haven't been on my phone all day. So can you just give me the debrief of the voicemails that I missed, please? Thanks.
You missed 2 voicemails. Mark, a friend, asked if you were available for lunch next Tuesday. Also, Car HQ called to offer an extended car warranty, but the call was identified as spam.
Awesome, thanks for the update.
You're welcome. If there's anything else you need, just let me know.
And there we have it. It gave us our update on the voicemails, and we have an avatar attached to our agent in real time. And that's it, guys. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to drop a like and subscribe. And I have some really exciting stuff coming out next week, so I'll see you in the next tutorial.